Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the big news of the day. If you are finding our new initiative to be helpful, do let us know by liking the video, by sharing your comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. The topic for today is Shaheed Diwas, which is marked on the 23rd of March to commemorate the sacrifice of India's legendary revolutionaries Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru. In this short and crisp analysis, let us briefly examine the life and ideological motivations of the leading revolutionaries of India's freedom struggle and examine the sequence of events which eventually led to their execution by the British. See, in India, Shaheed Diwas or Martyrs' Day, or also known as Sarvodaya Day, is marked several times in a year to pay tribute to those freedom fighters who made the supreme sacrifice of laying down their lives for India's freedom struggle in order to liberate India from the atrocities of British colonization. There are at least 7 recognized martyr days marked in India, but the most important of them is celebrated on the 30th of January and the 23rd of March. Because on the 30th of January, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by extremist Nathuram Godse, and this day is also marked as Martyrs' Day to commemorate the contributions of Mahatma Gandhi to India's freedom struggle. But the other most important Shaheed Diwas is marked on the 23rd of March, as on this day in 1931, India's legendary revolutionary leaders Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev were executed by the British following their acts of revolutionary violence which inspired India's freedom struggle. It was on the 23rd of March 1931 that Bhagat Singh, Shivaram Rajguru and Sukhdev Thapar were hanged at the Lahore Central Jail after being convicted in the Lahore Conspiracy case. See, Bhagat Singh, who was born in 1907 in the Faisalabad district of Pakistan's Punjab province, was a charismatic socialist freedom fighter who was strongly inspired by the ideologies of revolutionary militancy against any form of oppression or persecution. He was also heavily inspired by the ideologies of communism and had educated himself about the teachings and writings of Karl Marx, Lenin, Leon Trotsky, and other leading thinkers and practitioners of left-wing ideology. He was also heavily inspired by Bolshevism of the Bolshevik Party in the Soviet era and also found inspiration in the ideology of anarchism. He personally regarded Kartar Singh Sarabha, the founder of the Ghadar party, as his personal hero, and these ideological inclinations, followed by his belief in atheism, led Bhagat Singh to emerge as a dispassionate revolutionary at a very young age. His other associates, Rajguru, was born in Khed in present-day Maharashtra's Pune district, and Sukhdev was born in Punjab's Ludhiana. These 3 revolutionaries would go on to commit 2 major acts of revolutionary violence in collaboration with another revolutionary leader, Chandrasekhar Azad, in order to express and register their protest against British policies and British exploitation, and eventually their execution by the British turned them into legendary folk heroes of the Indian freedom movement. From a very young age, Bhagat Singh got actively involved in India's freedom movement after quitting education at the age of 13. Following their intellectual and ideological awakening, Bhagat Singh and Rajguru had become members of the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, which was a revolutionary party, and in December 1928, they plotted the assassination of a British police officer, James Scott, in Lahore, as they held him responsible for the death of legendary freedom fighter Lala Lajpat Rai. Lala Lajpat Rai succumbed to injuries following a lathi charge carried out by the Lahore police under the command of James Scott. Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and other members of HSRA, they held Lala Lajpat Rai in great regard and looked up to him as an inspiration. But his death, which was a result of British atrocities, enraged revolutionaries such as Bhagat Singh and Rajguru, and they plotted to assassinate James Scott, whom they held responsible for the killing of Lala Lajpat Rai. But this assassination plot would go wrong, and in a case of mistaken identity, they would assassinate the superintendent of police, John Saunders, who was shot dead right in front of the police station. In this incident, Chandrasekhar Azad would also kill and assassinate a police constable, following which all of them would flee Lahore in order to escape arrest, and Bhagat Singh would even change his appearance and seek refuge in Calcutta. But after several months of evading arrest, Bhagat Singh would again make his presence felt in April 1929. This time, Bhagat Singh teamed up with another revolutionary leader, Batukeshwar Dutt, and in a legendary revolutionary act, they would hurl low-intensity bombs in the Central Legislative Assembly Hall of Delhi to mark their protest against British rule and raise their voice against colonial atrocities. They would even throw leaflets into the gallery where the legislators were sitting and shouted the popular slogan, Inquilab Zindabad. It essentially meant, long live the revolution, but the British would classify this as a terrorist act by the communists or the Reds. But as the popular phrase goes, one man's revolutionary is another man's terrorist. Following the bombing incident of the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi, Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt, they themselves offered for arrest, and this not only brought them enormous publicity, but it also brought into light their complicity in the assassination of John Saunders in Lahore. Eventually, all the revolutionaries were put on trial, and they used the trial as an opportunity to raise their voice against British rule, and Bhagat Singh in particular would go on to provide very convincing arguments in the court to justify their limited acts of violence as a revolutionary struggle, which in turn gained them massive public sympathy and following. While in jail, Bhagat Singh even joined another revolutionary, Jatin Das, in a hunger strike where they would demand better prison conditions for Indian prisoners, which eventually resulted in the death of Jatin Das from starvation in September 1929. But eventually, all the three revolutionaries would be held guilty in the Lahore Conspiracy case, and they were sentenced to death by the magistrate on the 24th of March 1931. But following a huge public uproar, the British secretly preponed the execution by around 11 hours, and Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev were executed and hanged on the 23rd of March 1931. Later, they would even be secretly cremated on the banks of the Sutlej River, thereby turning the three revolutionaries into legendary freedom fighters of India. So on this day, we pay tribute to the leading revolutionaries of India's freedom struggle, and hence the day is marked as Shaheed Diwas. So this brings our discussion for the day to an end. And if you're finding our initiatives to be helpful, do let us know by liking the video and by subscribing to our channel. Thanks for watching.